Alright, to start this off, I'm not an expert in Skyrim lore. I'm doing this all off of my memory, and I haven't seen a lore video in a couple months. I will probably get many things wrong, so if you want actual Skyrim lore, go watch some Fudge Muppet or something. It starts with Lorkhan and the Divines. Lorkhan is some big powerful god being, and the Divines were some lesser gods. Lorkhan wanted to create a world, but he was a cheapskate and didn't want to use his own power, so he tricked some of the Divines to do it for him. The ones that helped him create the world became known as the Aedra, and the ones that didn't became known as the Daedra. After creating the world of Nirn, the Aedra, now weaker because their power was ruined, banded together to kill Lorkhan. They did, and they tore his body apart, and the pieces of his body are the moons you see each night in Skyrim. After this, the Aedra created a tower that they met at to discuss creating life and setting laws for the world. They created a bunch of inhabitants, such as the beast folk, including Argonians, Khajiits, bird and fox people, and the elves, including snow elves, Dwemer, the dwarves, and high elves. The Nords were not created on the continent of Tamriel, instead they were created on the continent of Atmora. I know I say created weird, but the land that would later become Skyrim was mainly inhabited by Dwemer and the Falmer, or the snow elves. The Falmer dominated the surface, and the Dwemer were cool and built underground cities. They lived together in peace. That's probably a joke again, I'm not an expert. But then the Nords showed up. There might have been some contention, but they began to be chill with the Snow Elves, and they were able to live together. This sweet gig stopped when the Snow Elves discovered the Eye of Magnus. The Eye of Magnus is said to hold immense power, even having the power to kill a god. With this, the Snow Elves got greedy and began to slaughter the Nords, not because they felt the Nords would try to take control of the Eye, but instead for the funny. After a lot of killing, Ysgramor and his two sons left back to Atmora, being the only Nords left alive. Now they wouldn't take this, so they went back with either 100 or 500 men and massacred the Snow Elves. To try and preserve themselves, the Snow Elves went to the Dwemer for refuge. The Dwemer weren't going to let them live in their cities for free, so they made a deal that they could live with them, but they would be enslaved and subjected to their experiments. With no other choice, they took this deal, and after being fed this weird kind of mushroom, they became blind. Eventually, the Dwemer just all disappeared, possibly due to messing around with the heart, and the Snow Elves eventually turned into the Falmer we know today. On the surface of Skyrim, the Nords spread out and flourished, their population and their strength grew, and Ysgramor built the city of Windhelm. At some point, Akatosh, the head of the 8 Divines, went, "You wanna see something crazy, pimp?" and decided to create dragons, his first being Alduin. He created Alduin for the purpose of destroying the world so that they could make a new one. However, Akatosh was a bit of a dimwit and made the dragons prideful and with a desire to dominate. Alduin saw a world filled with easily dominated beings, and with all his will to dominate and his prideful nature, he turned against Akatosh and decided to rule the world instead of destroy it. He and the dragons began to enslave men, elves, and beastfolk, and they took control of Tamriel. To aid them for their quest for control, they created the Dragon Cult. Some people became extremely loyal to the dragons and bent to their every will, and a few of those were instated as dragon priests. The priests would help keep the people in line and lead in place of the dragons. One of these priests was a man named Mirak. Akatosh wasn't going to accept Alduin going against his will, so he gave Mirak the soul of a dragon, turning him into the first Dragonborn. Being Dragonborn gives mortals the soul of a dragon, and with that also comes their nature, their pride and their will for domination, and Mirak fell for this nature. This is also the reason many future Dragonborn emperors would become megalomaniacal and commit bad things. Mirak desired to rule, so he turned against the dragons and got 3 other dragon priests to join him to rule over Solstheim. It was here the Daedric prince Hermaeus Mora saw Mirak's thirst for power and knowledge, and he was able to take Mirak as his champion. Mirak became the most powerful man, and any dragon that tried to stop him, he would kill and devour their soul. He had the people of Solstheim build a temple for him, and he ruled the island. Eventually, all of the dragons knew of his betrayal, so they all flew to the island and were able to overpower Mirak. Just before he would get killed, Hermaeus Mora took him into his realm of Apocrypha, and the dragons burned down Mirak's temple. In Skyrim, Alduin had begun becoming more tyrannical and brutal, and his brother Parthenax, seeing what Alduin was doing, took pity on the mortals. He turned against the rest of the dragons and taught man the way of the voice, giving them the ability to shout. With this newfound power, the Nords were much better at fighting the dragons, but they still couldn't defeat them. Alduin had no ordinary soul and could not be slain like a lesser dragon, and he could resurrect slain dragons. He could also travel to Sovngarde, the afterlife of the Nords. Here, he would find people he killed, kill them again, and devour their souls. The Nords, after a long study of the dragon language, were able to create their own shout, Dragonrend. Dragons are unable to comprehend the shout, and are forced to the ground so they can be killed much easier. The humans were able to slay many more dragons, and eventually 3 Nords, Feldir the Wise, Hakon One-Eye, and Gormlaith Goldenhilt, would try to kill Alduin. They went to the throat of the world where they would fight him. He showed up, and they used Dragonrend to bring him down. They soon figured that Alduin couldn't be killed, which they figured out after Alduin bit Gormlaith in half. With no other option, Feldir used an Elder Scroll to banish him from their time. Finally, with Alduin gone, the dragons still loyal to Alduin could easily be defeated, and Tamriel was free from their tyranny. Unfortunately, the dimwit blades who were formed to follow the Dragonborn would slay most of the dragons because they are stupid and didn't understand that many of the dragons were no longer a threat. Fortunately, they never got to Paarthurnax, and he would continue to teach a group of men known as the Greybeards at the throat of the world. The Nords of this time knew that Alduin could not be banished forever. With the Elder Scroll, they discovered a prophecy of when he would return. The prophecy states, "When misrule takes its place at the 8 corners of the world, when the brass tower walks and time is reshaped, when the thrice blessed fail and the red tower trembles, when the dragonborn ruler loses his throne and the white tower falls, when the snow tower lies sunless, kingless, bleeding, the world eater wakes and the wheel turns upon the last dragonborn." The first line is what happens in the first Elder Scrolls game, Arena, where a court mage traps Uriel Septim VII in a staff and breaks the staff and spreads the pieces across Tamriel. The brass tower walking happens in Daggerfall, when the clockwork god created by the Dwemer is awoken and used. The agent, also known as the hero of Daggerfall, is able to choose to give the tower to 6 different people. Due to time warping, all 6 outcomes were able to occur simultaneously. The thrice blessed failing refers to the tribunal in Morrowind. After they all die or disappear, the rock above the main city crashed down and the red tower, a volcano, erupted. The dragonborn ruler losing his throne is what happened in Oblivion, where Mehrunes Dagon tried to invade Tamriel, but was defeated by Martin Septim after he acquired the power of Akatosh. Fun fact, the history of Blackmarsh was able to warn the Argonians of the impending invasion, so they were able to prepare way ahead of Dagon. When the portals opened, the Argonians fought back so well, they were completely able to halt the invasion. Last, the Snow Tower bleeding is the conflict in Skyrim, when Ulfric murdered Torygg and sent Skyrim into war. Now there's a lot more to talk about, but frankly, I don't know diddly squat about much of it. I could talk about the Daedric Princes or something if you want me to. But anyway, that'll be all. Fare thee well, fellas.